Welcome to the Through the Lens of Learning podcast. If we haven't met, hello, I'm your host, Dr. Tracy Shroyer. I'll give you 2 words that summarize me to a T: lifelong learner. Join me as I share a bit about my own journey of curiosity, learning, and wonder. You'll also get to hear from some phenomenal individuals on what they're curious about learning and what they have to share too. Are you itching with excitement yet? I am, so let's get started. All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of Through the Lens of Learning. And today I have guest Kerrie Campbell with me, so welcome Kerrie.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me on.
Yes. So Kerrie, let's get started with how you define learning, if you can share that with us.
Yeah, so I really define learning as just all about growth to me. And it's not so much about just the technical side, although that is clearly a large part of it. But more so with learning comes a lot of the personal growth. So I'm just a really big believer in always being open to learning. One of my favorite sayings is you learn something new every day. So a lot of it is around attitude and curiosity and just wanting to essentially almost better yourself in your life. So that's really how I see learning.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. And Kerrie, I try not to look too much at my guest's background because I do want to get curious. I love that part of it. You have a lot of different things that you've done. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and let's kind of talk about your journey?
Yeah, certainly. So at the moment, I run my own company. So my company is called Live Your Sensational Life, and I focus on helping career-driven women and mothers really step into their highest potential and redefine success in a way that allows them to thrive so they can live a sensational life. And my background is of 25 years in corporate, and I was a global executive human resources leader. And I actually started my career in learning and development. So I have a big passion for learning and development. And I progressed into organizational development and then talent management from there, and then over to more the generalist HR side, but in a leadership role. So I had a lot of all the stuff I'd done before really come under me as well. So yeah, it's been a very varied history. My whole career in human resources, all of those pieces, which I've just had, I want to say, a phenomenal career. And I chose to leave corporate completely last year to start my own coaching company.
Okay. So when you first got started out in your career, how did you figure out what you wanted to do, what to do, where to go?
So very early on in my career, I actually fell into it by accident, which is so fascinating because I went through all of my schooling. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I never really had landed on anything, or nothing had taken my interest for me to say, that's really what I want to do. And so I knew I wanted to work in an office. So I ended up working for a company in an administration role, and we actually had a computer training room and we rented that out. And so one day, one of the trainers, because they were often consultants, one of the trainers said to me, have you ever thought about teaching like computers to adult learners? And because she said, if you did, I would hire you. So I went down to the local technical education college. This was in Australia, and they've got a very big Australian qualifications framework. And so I went down to the local technical college, and I basically got a job in the evenings teaching adults how to use computers because I thought that's a way to get some experience. And then I also enrolled in a certificate in training and assessment at the time, so I could really learn how to do it properly and do the actual trainings, all the development, the facilitation of it, and the assessing part of it. So that's really what, I guess, kickstarted my career into learning and development.
And then how long did you stay in that type of role and doing that on the side before you determined there's something else you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I did it. I did it for a few years. So I didn't really stay in the administration side for too long of my actual job, but I did do the teaching on the side for a couple of years. And I actually ended up going and working full time at the college it was like a short period of time. But then I joined a training company. So I had a job offer from a training company. And so that expanded beyond just the computer side of it, so the IT and the technical side. And we also did a lot of the professional development training as well. And so I ended up getting thrown into a leadership role and becoming a branch manager at that training company, and then really a regional manager as well. So very quickly, and this was again pretty early in my career, I'd only been working for a few years. And so that gave me some really great experience. And I then moved to another training company. So I knew somebody else that owned a recruitment company, and he was buying a training company. So he asked me to move over and manage that as they added it on to their business. So I probably did that for about 5 years or so. And in the time I was working on my master's of business administration as well to get some professional qualifications. And then one of our clients was actually in the mining industry, and he asked me to come and join them. And so that was for BHP Billiton. So that was what really got my career started in the entire resources sector. So from there, for the last almost 20 years, I really worked in both mining and oil and gas sectors.
Oh, wow. And it seems like a lot of from what you're saying so far, a lot of your career moves have been people reaching out to you and not necessarily you trying to seek something out.
Yeah, I was very fortunate from that perspective because opportunities always seemed to land and fall in my lap, which was great. And it was often through my network, and each move I really saw as an opportunity to continue my own growth. So I knew I was ambitious. I knew I wanted a career, but I never really had one position or one level in mind as I started this journey. I think very early on decided to be very open to whatever opportunities were arising, and just considering anything that came my way to see if it was a good fit, and what the opportunity for me was to learn new skills and progress.
Okay. So in the time that you were in human resources and the oil and mining, did you pretty much do something very similar across that time frame in HR, or did you do a lot of different things? Like, what did that look like
Yeah,
over that period of
I
time?
really did a lot of different things. So I from there's always the technical side and the technical training components, but many of the departments that I was within, we added the professional development side. I went down even the leadership development side. So I developed and delivered a lot of leadership training throughout my career. Um, I ran learning management systems as we implemented new learning management systems into our companies. I always happened to be working for companies that were booming. And so there was just a lot going on, and everything needed to be done very quickly, because particularly in the resources sector, as the prices really start to rise, that puts a lot of pressure on the business to just expand and really rapidly grow and get everything set up. So I've gone through all the conversations around centralization, decentralization of
Oh
learning
my
and
gosh.
training departments, pretty much everything from that perspective. Then I moved into talent management at one point as well. And so I really was focused more on then the senior leadership levels, the succession planning, and more of that side of the development for the leaders as we did the succession planning from a global standpoint.
Okay.
So that was really fun, and really enjoyed that. And then the last job that I had, the company I came to join, I was a vice president of human resources. And it's funny because the very first day, I remember sitting in my office, and our VP of operations showed up in my door, and she said, "By the way, the training department currently reports to me, but I'm giving it to you. I hope that's okay." And to this day, we still laugh about it because it was literally day one for me.
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
gosh.
okay, I don't mind an extra challenge. So
Okay. So, through all of the different pieces that you got to work on, would you say there's one that like stood out above the rest that was your favorite to work on?
yeah, I actually have a few.
Okay.
One of the ones that I had, which I think really just we did we did from a leadership standpoint, the company was doing this really well. It came from very unfortunate circumstances. So when I was within BHP Billiton, unfortunately, they'd had a number of fatalities right before I joined. And they had to go into some remedial actions. And a lot of it was based on leadership at the supervisor, superintendent levels, just not having the proper knowledge within those roles. And so to put remedial actions in place, we'd actually got some consultants in that developed an entire what we called Leadership Scorecard at the time. So it was this entire program where it actually really defined the expectations from supervisor right up to the general manager level. So each level of leadership, it sat down and defined what the expectations were from like a safety standpoint, a safety leadership standpoint, performance standpoint, I guess the people management. And it was the first time in my career to that day, and probably still one of the few times that I've seen those roles really effectively defined about what does it mean to be, what is it that is the job of a supervisor or a superintendent or a leader, a manager. And we had trainers and our coaches actually shadow them for 3 months, really teaching them. And then we put them through an assessment. And so the nice thing was, it was a lot of them gave feedback that it was the first time that they had ever had their job requirements defined to them. Because I think it was very common, probably not just in the resources sector, but across many industries, that people get promoted based on technical skills. And so they're really good at their job. So they get put into a leadership role, a supervisor role, and they're never really taught how to do the people side. And that's what this was teaching them. And so we had people opt out. So they self-selected. We had people that really stepped up and just grabbed a hold of that and really ran with it. And so I think that experience really stands out in my mind as to what can happen when somebody understands the expectations of them and they get the proper support and development to actually do that role effectively. So that was definitely one of my favorites.
That's awesome. And it seems like some human resources, just the experiences I've had with human resources individuals, is there's sometimes a fear in setting out what those expectations are, what those requirements are, because there's a fear they might miss something. Yes. And then people think it's a check the box of, if I do XYZ, then I should be in this kind of role.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we talked a lot about in my roles about these being minimum expectations. So whenever they were defined, it's like, no, these are just the minimum of what you need to do. There's more from here. And so that helps mitigate it. But it really is, that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, for many companies, is being able to very effectively define the job requirements of, particularly around the soft skills. So the technical skills, they're the really easy part, but it's the soft skills that's the more difficult part to define and really set the expectations up front.
Right. And I love too what you said, because there are so many organizations that promote people because they are so good at the technical part, but then they promote them almost like throwing them into the deep end of the water if they don't have those soft skills. And it's like, unless you have some kind of program or some sort of support for them, yes, they may fall. I've actually found, so the company I work for full time, in their technology area, they're starting out and doing where you can get promoted into a leadership role if that's something that you want, or you can get promoted into another path that still takes you up the corporate ladder, but it's not a people leader. So you can use your technical skills and work on projects, work with leaders and things like that.
That is fantastic, because that has also been one of the biggest challenges wherever I've gone, is people feel that they can't progress if they are technical. They don't necessarily have the people leadership capability, but they feel if they don't go into a leadership role, they've got nowhere to progress to. So that having that leadership and technical paths, I've always felt very important. And some of the organizations, we've done that better than others.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's great.
Yeah. So let's talk, Kerrie, a little bit about, so you're in your corporate world, and what ended up happening that made you decide, I want to walk away from this and do my own thing and start my own business?
So I think it was a number of things. It really started during the pandemic. I believe a lot of people were reassessing their life at that point. But my career, and having two teenagers, my career, I've always been in really demanding jobs. And we moved from, so one of my jobs brought us from Australia to the US, and that was originally a 3-year temporary assignment, but that became permanent. So we got our green cards and we've stayed. So we've been in the States for 9 years. But I've often since then held global level roles. So it's involved just a lot of travel, high growth companies, a lot going on. And you eventually hit burnout. It's this when you go all the time, trying to be in those type of roles and raise a family. I'd sort of hit the burnout and the adrenal fatigue in the past, and we had a lot going on during the pandemic. We were integrating 2 parts of our company, and I was leading the people side of that integration. Plus the pandemic hit, and my team and I were the ones trying to keep all of our employees safe. So we had employees over multiple countries working 24/7 on a lot of our sites and some in the offices. It was just a big year. I think what really hit me was my children are only at home for a few more years, and I didn't want to not see them and regret, at some point not having that time with them. So even though I was working from home, I was still stuck in meetings 12 hours a day in front of my computer. And so that was really what prompted me initially to think about what would I like to do in my future. And then from there, I started thinking about, well, what is it in my career that I've enjoyed the most? Because I didn't know what was next. But I wanted to make sure it was something I was really passionate about and wanted to find my purpose and where I could have a big impact. And so when I look back through my career, I really loved coaching people. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about learning and development, because to me, it is about seeing people's growth, and it's seeing them achieve the next level of success and really push themselves out of their own comfort zone, push themselves to do things that they never thought they were capable of. And just seeing people do that just fills me up. And that's what I feel like I'm so passionate about. So that is where I eventually came to the decision about wanting to start my own coaching company. And really that decision to leave permanently, I didn't feel like I could do this on the side, because if I wasn't working, I was exhausted. And so
Yeah.
I really thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to go all in and just take the leap.
Yeah. So did you start to do some things before you left corporate with your business, like to make sure that you were stable and in a good position, or was it kind of like just a switch?
Yeah, so I had that was the plan in my mind, and I had formed my company, and I had started actually doing some additional training myself, because suddenly I never expected to leave the corporate world. So I hadn't really seen myself as an entrepreneur or a business owner. And so I needed to start really trying to learn those skills, which can be very daunting, because you've come from this corporate world and suddenly this whole new set of skills that I've never had exposure to in many cases were there. So I did start learning on the side and joining different programs and trying to upskill myself very quickly. But what I found was I just didn't have the time to try and get that side of the business going while I was still doing my job. So, I felt very fortunate that where we were from a financial standpoint, my husband hadn't been working either, because he had been at home with the kids. It was much easier for me to manage my career that way. So it really was a big leap and a big risk from a financial standpoint. But we were fortunate because of my career that we were in a position to be able to at least give that a go.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your business, and what do you do? What are the kind of services that you offer in your business?
Yeah, so I really am focusing on coaching, I guess, women similar to the journey that I've had. So women that they want to have a successful career, but they're trying to balance everything. And it's not necessarily just mothers. I know not all women out there are mothers, but often many do have a family, and they're trying to do that juggle between work and their children. But at the same time, the women that don't have families, they may have like parents they need to take care of, or other things going on in their life. And they're really looking for more of the balance, because work can just become all consuming to us. And so
even more with the pandemic, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we've had to learn new ways of working. And then that's just been, it's pulled people back and forth, because it was suddenly work from home, and then we had to learn how to do that effectively and manage everything. And then it's suddenly, oh, we may return back to the office. And so then people had to get their heads wrapped around going back to something, So yeah, it's definitely been a long journey. So I really try and help women in my coaching figure out what is their potential. So they want to be successful, but let's really figure out what their strengths are, align it to their passion and purpose so they can be happy in what they're doing in their career, and then figure out how to remove the roadblocks that are stopping them. So I very much focus, I'm actually a board certified clinical hypnotherapist now, but I really focus on the subconscious mind because that's where a lot of our limiting beliefs sit. And that is what stops us from being able to really effectively get to that next level of success in our minds. So that's where I try and really look at the limiting beliefs and remove anything that's stopping them and holding them back from reaching that highest potential.
Okay. And I saw also that you are dipping your toes into, and maybe you're further along than from when I read on your website, but about human design.
Yes. I do human design readings. I use that as part of my coaching because that's where I really think that gives us a very full picture of what is somebody's true potential, what are all their strengths and gifts, and what are some of those things that may be preventing them from really leaning into that and stepping into that.
That's awesome. I went through a 6-month program
Oh,
focused on
wow.
human design and being an entrepreneur.
Oh,
And so
wow.
yes, it was funny because I used to, because I teach, I work full time, and I also have my business. And I would kind of like scale back a little bit when people would ask me what I do, because I'm like, I do a lot of things, but that's just how I am. And so when I learned more about human design, I'm a manifesting generator. I felt like it gave me
Yeah,
permission. Like I gave myself permission.
absolutely.
I said, this is just who I am. This is how I work. It's not everybody, but this is how I'm able to do all of the things that I do. So it
That
is really
is
fascinating.
That is so great because I really do feel I'm actually a manifestor in human design. And I feel like, as you know, I'm not designed to do a 9 to 5 job. So it's no wonder I had felt so burnt out in my career, really trying to work in a way that wasn't conducive to my own energy. And I do
Mm-hmm.
feel like that helped give me permission to make a different decision about where I wanted to take my future and how to work in a way that really I could use my energy a lot more effectively. And it's funny, a manifesting generator, I was just talking to a friend who I pulled her chart, and because she had all these different businesses just recently, and I said, I bet I know what type you are. And when I pulled her chart, sure enough, she's a manifesting generator. I said, you are supposed to be multi-passionate. And she
Mm-hmm.
said, I always thought there was something wrong with me. And now it just really gave her permission to say, no, absolutely, anything you are passionate about and you want to keep doing these different things, that is what you're here to do. So I love
Yes.
how it gives us just permission to be ourselves, especially where we thought there was something wrong with us, or we always maybe tried to be something a little bit different because that's what we thought we should be.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And in the past, I would say I would have thought it was a little woo woo, which even the
Yes.
coach that I was working with, she's like, that's normal for people to see that. But the
Yeah.
more you dig into it and the more you start to pick apart pieces, and I had even bought a book to kind of be able to go through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so me. And then I looked up my mom and my sister and their
Yeah.
types, and I'm like, this explains so much of how we
Yeah.
are the way that we are and the things that we've done in our lives, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I thought the same thing when I discovered human design, and it sort of led me down that path. And I had even a little bit been worried about introducing it to people, particularly in the space in corporate that I've worked in too, because it does seem a little bit woo. But everyone that I have read their charts, and I've really said, you need to learn about this and it's just been so accurate. Their minds have been blown. And I think
Yes.
the proof is always in the pudding, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just really helped people just learn so much more about themselves. And I've made it a big part of one of the tools that I use in my coaching because
I
it's so
love that.
valuable.
I love that. And so you had said too about mindset and thinking about women's mindsets and their limiting beliefs. What have you seen is maybe one of the things that women have, maybe their limiting belief, that is holding back more and more women? Is there one or two that stand out?
Yeah, definitely imposter syndrome is one. It feels like that's a big one. It's almost like the feeling of not being enough, and particularly as I'm now in groups, because I very much saw this in the corporate world as well, but now that I'm in other groups and other programs where it's more of the entrepreneurial, I see these really extremely talented women that are almost holding themselves back because they're feeling like if they take their business bigger or really get it out there or run webinars or do whatever in front of audiences, that there is this feeling of, well, who am I to be doing this? Am I really good enough? Other people might know more than me. And so that really does come up a lot, one of the big ones. And so I think it's just that confidence in themselves to step up to the next level, and really just push themselves to the point that, that just to know, yes, they can have this credibility. They definitely have the knowledge and just even their own energy to be the people out there doing what they want to do and take their business where they want to go.
Right. Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, the fears and the
So is there
limiting beliefs.
anything that maybe we haven't covered? Oh,
No,
go ahead. I'm sorry. I had a blip, I think, on my.
yeah, sorry. No, I was going to say the fears and the limiting beliefs are really the biggest thing that I think that do hold people back from just living the life that they really want to live. And so I think that's what's, what are people passionate about? And often when they want to dream big or they have these thoughts of what they want to do in the future, then they start pulling themselves back. And it's not just women, but I see it a lot in many women. But they just start pulling themselves back thinking, that, oh, that dream's too big. I really need to come down to reality. And I think it's a lot of what we heard in our childhood and just how generationally, how people before us thought as well. And so it really, I think, is around trying to remove those limiting beliefs and really get people to dream even bigger and really want that and really be passionate about achieving that in the future.
Yeah, and I can say for me and some other entrepreneurs that are in groups that I've been in, there's a lot of comparison too. And I even heard an entrepreneur recently that said she's not following anybody that does the same thing she does because she gets so stuck in, well, they're doing this and maybe I should do this and I'm not good enough and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. And that's been a topic of discussion that I've had in a few groups of mine as well, is really when you get stuck in that, just stop following people and really don't even go on social media so much. I know sometimes our businesses, we need to be on social media to do our thing, but just not to be looking at other people in that way, and then do those, try and work on those internal beliefs of not comparing. Because we all, and that's again why I love human design, because it shows that we all have a very unique, different journey that's right for us. So what other people are doing and what's right for them doesn't mean that that is the right way for us to be running our businesses and trying to grow our businesses.
True. Yeah, it would be kind of interesting to see for the human design of the different types, somebody running a business, the same type of business for each of the different styles and kind of how they
Yes.
do it differently. That would be kind of a cool
Yeah,
research. I'm always in that
absolutely.
research mindset.
Yeah.
So, Kerrie, is there anything that maybe we haven't covered that you wanted to share before we start to wrap up?
I don't think so. I really just, I think we talked a little bit about it, but one of the things is what gets in the way of people's learning. And I really do think it's those fears and insecurities. And so all I want to mention is for people just to recognize maybe if they have those fears and insecurities coming up, and not to let them hold them back from that learning journey and from being a constant lifelong learner. And I think this is why I consider myself a lifelong learner as well. But I remember even in my school years, I had my own limiting belief around not being smart enough, or I didn't, school wasn't so conducive to me in that learning and studying environment because I was more of a hands-on learner, needing to actually implement things for it to really resonate. And so I think after I left school and realized I could actually learn, and because that was a limiting belief that I'd held, then that really set me on this learning journey. So just the fears and the insecurities that may prevent people from going down that path of really being open to learning.
Okay. So one of the things I did when I did check out your website just a little bit, you have a lot of free resources on there. And one of them that I ended up downloading was your journal prompts. And
Yeah.
you have weekly and daily. And I like the weekly because even in the last few weeks, I started to say, okay, breaking down my annual, my quarterly goals for my business, I'm
Yeah.
breaking them down even to here's for this month, and then each week making sure my tasks are aligned to my goals. So I like
Yeah.
the prompts that you have there, and I'm going to use those as I plan for this coming week.
Wonderful.
Are there any specific exercises or tools that you would recommend to help people that are having those limiting beliefs to be able to work towards, I don't know if overcoming is the right word, or coping, working through those? Any, tips or best practices for people to begin to do that?
Yes, I would say one of the really effective tools that I found is it's called the emotional freedom technique, or tapping, it's better known as. And so this is, and it's linked to your meridian points in your body, but it's actually, and there's tons of YouTube clips on there. There's a really great guy, Brad Yates, who does a lot of YouTube clips on it, but it just takes you through. You make some statements as you're tapping on just different parts of your body, and you make some statements, but that kind of sinks into and gets down into that level of being able to reframe the belief system that you do have. So once you identify maybe what is preventing you from achieving your goals, or maybe it's procrastination or whatever it is that's coming up, then you can actually use the tapping really to help work through and start that rewiring, reframing process. So that's one I definitely
Okay.
recommend. The other one I would say is hypnosis. Now, I know a lot of people, that probably scares a lot of people, because I don't know if it, I think we see things in Hollywood movies and that really gives it a different representation, but all hypnosis is like just a deep meditation state. And so there's
Okay.
really great people like Marissa Peer and other people out there that do have some hypnosis online videos. And obviously that's something that I can do as well in my sessions. But that really does start targeting and rewiring some of those belief systems to be able to help get you to the next, that success that you're wanting, and to achieve your goals if you're feeling really stuck. So there's a few there. The other one I wanted to mention that I actually do have in that journal too is the intention setting. So I really have discovered how powerful setting intentions is, and whether that's setting the intention for your day, even transitioning between different activities throughout your day. So when you're really like busy and have a lot going on, and maybe it's going from getting kids ready for school in the morning, and suddenly then you trying to get them out the door in this big chaotic morning, and then you rush to show up to work, and you have a busy day of meetings, and then you have to go be with your kids again. Even just every transition that you make, really thinking about the intention of how you want to show up in that next activity or that next part of your day. So setting intentions on day, even from activity to activity, is just so powerful, because it really gets you out of operating in autopilot mode and more thinking about what is it you want to create, and how do you want to show up.
And that could just take a minute or two, like just taking, you
Absolutely.
know,
Yeah,
thinking of that intention and kind of going forward. I
absolutely.
love that. I love that. Awesome. Well, this has been great, Kerrie. I
Yeah.
appreciate you being a guest. If somebody listening wants to follow you or connect with you, how would you recommend that they do that?
Yeah. So my website is liveyoursensationallife.com. And I'm active on Instagram, and it's at Coaching by Kerrie, which is Kerrie. And I'm also active on LinkedIn, trying to get a little bit more active on LinkedIn as well. So they're probably the best places to either follow me or contact me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Kerrie, for being a guest. And
Great.
we'll wrap up today's show, and we'll see you all on the next episode.
Thank you so much.
This podcast is brought to you by Upskill University. You can find more information about how to become part of the Upskill community for free, this and other episodes of the Through the Lens of Learning podcast, and more on the website at www.upskilluniversity.com. Thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.